meeting you right where you are on your foster care journey. This is the Forgotten Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Forgotten Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Cabe, and I am so happy to be with you. If you are part of the foster care community, passionate about serving, or simply interested in learning more, we are here for you. In every episode of this podcast, you will hear stories from men and women who have experienced foster care to one degree or another. They may have grown up in the system, are caseworkers, foster parents, or others who are here to bring you hope or encouragement. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe and share it with a friend. And remember, you are not alone. I hope you enjoy the Forgotten Podcast. John, I don't know if you remember, but we ran into each other at Replanted Conference. You were getting ready to speak. We were back in that speaker room. Mm-hmm. And that was the first. Yeah, that's right. And you were preparing yourself for your message. And I did not know at that time that you had never shared your story in that depth before. And to go on a stage to an audience of hundreds and hundreds of people, it's a big deal. And I didn't get the chance to actually hear you then. So I'm really thankful to be able to sit with you here and be able to hear your story, walk with you in this. But I just want to say, I really appreciate your willingness to share the hard parts and the hope in your story. First of all, just tell me, how was that experience for you at Replanted?
Wonderful. Yeah. So it was the second time I had attended the conference. So I went the year prior as just a total spectator and had no real expectation. I was invited by a friend who was attending and who was a foster parent and very much in that community. And I guess I had I'd done a little mentorship to one of her sons who had been having some, going through kind of a difficult season. And I just saw a lot of similarities. And I was like, I think I get why he's doing that. Can I talk to him, And we did a couple of FaceTimes with his mom and I. And she said, there's this conference in Chicago, which is where I live. She says, you should come. So I came, and I was in a very interesting place in my life altogether, but just on my journey with God and also my own journey of foster care and youth, and we'll talk about that, but just where I was even as an adult trying to reconcile my experience. And my mind was just kind of blown away by the conference as a spectator. And I was like, I can't believe I'm in a room full of these people who chose this journey and want these kids, and they're all here because they want to be better or do better or support each other and connect. And there was just a love in that room. And that was not my personal experience so much through foster care. So I was actually blown away in a lot of ways. But I remember thinking a lot the first year, man, I am just glad people like this exist. And I had really hoped people like this exist, and I thought it, and I was sure of it, and they were on TV and stuff, but I hadn't really met them. So it gave me a lot of hope, and it was great for my spirit, rejuvenating. And then to answer your question, fast forward a year later, I spoke at the conference, and I couldn't, I was involved in all these different ways with coordinating with Jen, one of the founders, and preparation and her team, and really, trying to determine what I wanted to share and didn't want to share, and how I could, and ultimately, my compass there was, how could I be of service? How can I help these people? If I could help any of these people here get a blueprint or a cheat sheet or insight or anything into their kiddo, then that's what I wanted to do, So that's kind of what I used as my compass as far as trying to determine about what of my life experiences to share or not. But that was a really long answer, but it was wonderful. It was therapeutic. I met those people I didn't really think it existed, in real life. And Yeah, and I got everything I ever could have wanted from it. Truly, strangers wrote me afterwards and said, "You said this, and it touched my heart because of this," or I was like, one of the most beautiful messages. I get choked up at it, but was they were really struggling with a teenager, a foster child, and they were like, we were about to give up. We were right there, and justifiably, even I'm like, I might have given up on that. I might have said, we'll love you from a distance, Bubba. But anyway, and I had shared one or two anecdotes that they were like, man, and it just gave us faith and it helped. And that was the best thing I ever could have hoped from that experience. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yes, it was wonderful. Sorry.
Wow. That's so incredible.
Choke myself up.
I love that.
Believe that.
That is A-okay. Yeah. We are very comfortable with tears around here. Well, let's give our listeners just a little bit more context, John. You were declared a ward of the state when you were only 5 years old.
Right.
And you really spent your entire childhood in foster care and aged out. You lived in 11 homes and 2 group homes.
Correct.
That is not the idyllic childhood that we dream of, that the movies portray, right?
Right.
Before, obviously, this is only a piece of your story. And today, I know we're going to hear some hard things. We're going to hear some injustice and some things you've suffered. But we're also going to hear hope that how God is bringing healing, has brought healing, right? I mean, I'm excited to hear hope in your journey as well. But before we really dig in, John, what else do we need to know about you to give our listeners context?
Yeah, I guess present day. I think it's good to start there. I'm a father of 2. I have a 13-year-old daughter. I have a 4.5-year-old son, a special needs son, who he's autistic. Both of my kids are absolute miracles. Their dreams come true. They're everything I ever could have imagined. I have a great career in healthcare. I've worked in healthcare and consulting, essentially a revenue cycle, which is like financial consulting, for over a decade. And I was really lucky, like my life, hardship or not, yes, hope. There's always been a lot of hope, but I've also, I want to always try to be fair and say I've gotten lucky sometimes also, and I've gotten opportunities that some of my peers just didn't. And it was up to me to kind of take advantage of those opportunities. But, I don't take for granted that I was able to go to a public high school in the best county in the state and get a really good education. And then I got to go to college. And I did it on scholarship, and I earned those things. But like, there were other kids in foster care that wasn't even that was never going to happen because it wasn't even on the radar. It wasn't because I started there, so I can identify with that. I can remember when that was out of the question, and then I changed environments, and all of a sudden that's just where everybody else around me was going. So I just kind of went, and these things worked out for me. So I do want to acknowledge the luck in there and or maybe God's hand, whatever it was. But I had a lot of opportunities some folks didn't have. But anyway, they led me to a place where, like, as a grown up, for all the insecurity I had as a kiddo, I'm pretty secure now, and that's a blessing in and of itself, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, John. Why don't we dive in, and we're going to go way back. We're going to go back to maybe your first memory, your earliest memories of childhood. What comes to mind? Yeah,
they're pretty dark, They're pretty dark. I mean, I guess unless I redirect and, I can think about some loving moments with my sisters. So I'm with my parents, I'm one of 4 children. So there's my oldest sister, Brandy, Melissa, myself, me, Johnny, and then my youngest sister, Valerie. My earliest memories, my parents were already split up, I guess. They weren't living together, and just really shadows of kind of physical abuse, candidly. And at this age, at 39 years old, they're like a foggy dream. It's almost like I could hardly identify them. They're like a dream of a dream, and as a kiddo, I would wake up in the middle of the night and they were vivid, and you couldn't convince me that ghost wasn't in the room with me. They were so real. So, I guess that's a good thing. Time heals, but it was just dark. I remember pain. I remember fear. I remember being hungry. Like these sad things, Yeah. But then, I can remember there's humanity in that. The irony is that my big sister, Melissa, like she and I were, my mother had a particular boyfriend that just did not like us. And he would whip us with a belt, and he would do it belt buckle first. So I'm maybe 3 years old and she's 5 years old. And I remember laying on a cot, like a cot, like a rollout mattress, I guess you would get like at an old hotel, but there was no mattress. It was just springs. So we're laying on the springs, which are poking and kind of hurt, right? And kind of getting our whipped, But I remember in that moment, as scary as this is, right? This is a very loving memory for me, because it's my sister Missy bear hugging me and sheltering and holding me, and I don't remember the belt hitting. She protected me, and so when you say my first memory. That's kind of my first memory. And I guess it's a loving memory. It's a scary memory, but it's my big sister protecting me. And so I guess that's maybe I guess that's it, but to me, that's a loving memory in a way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. Talk about laying down your life for someone.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so crazy. And she and I are in such different places as adults, and not to redirect the conversation, but it's so crazy because she's so loving and she was so nurturing for sure. And not that she's not that now, but you talk about or people sometimes reference nature and nurture and your environment and the importance of those things. And I'm not an expert on anything, but I know that she lives 2 blocks from where we were born. And within the same zip code she's been in her whole life. And she's in a basement of a house of someone else and is on drugs and just battling addiction. I'm not accusing her. I'm not condemning her. She's just living a very difficult life, and it's limiting. And she's had 6 children, and a couple have passed away, but those who didn't, she's lost rights to all of them. And so it's like she habituated the cycle completely. Yeah. And she's someone I love, and she was in the shelter with me, and we can discuss that too. So if there's anyone in the world, even if she wasn't my sister, I would be like, has every right to just give up, say, I give up. She would be the one. So I'm not condemning her for some of her choices or life experiences, but it is living proof that 2 people can start in the same place and end incredibly differently, and not that I'm superior either. I don't want to sound that way.
No, I don't hear that.
Yeah. I feel like we interpret the world through different lenses, and I'll talk to Missy today, and it's a lot of it is like, how could this happen to me? Or why does this always happen to me? Or that, I'll hear those sentences a lot. Or like in my mind, I'll interpret a problem and I immediately sort of want to go into like actionable. How can we be actionable? And I think that mentality served me a lot different growing up than maybe her. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, probably got
absolutely.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Tell me, what was, obviously you were in your home with your mom. Is that right? Yeah. For the first 5 years? Like what was that like? And then we're going to move into, do you remember the circumstances surrounding entering foster care?
Yeah, sure. So, definitely. So I was with I think my mom and dad were sharing custody, or I don't even know if they were legally married or not. But we were splitting time back and forth, and at least I remember, again, I was a little boy, but I remember feeling like I had priority, like my dad really wanted time with me, and he didn't maybe know so much what to do with the girls, kind of a thing. And my mom knew that. So I think I was maybe a leverage point between some of their issues or maybe the trade-off or whatever, but there was always friction when I was with the both of them. It was never a good scenario that I can ever recall. But I remember, being at his house or her house, kind of a scenario. And he was dating a different woman and living with her when I was about 4 years old. And my sister Melissa and I were staying with him at this period. I don't know if it was for the week or for the month or whatever. But we were at my dad's house. And it was him and his girlfriend, and she had 2 young girls herself that were probably 6 and 4 years old. And that in itself was a bad relationship. All I can remember is like going upstairs in that house. There was like a stairway and there was holes in the wall because he would punch holes in the wall. So I guess he had some anger management issues, I mean, to me, he was my hero, and like he was as cool as like Fonzie. But like when I was an adult, I'm like, oh my gosh, I could never imagine. And if my kids saw that, oh my gosh. But to me, that was cool as a little boy. But So anyway, so he was in maybe a volatile relationship there with that lady, and he certainly, I'll never know. It's interesting being a ward of the state and having such a disconnect with my biological family stuff. There's so much I will never know, and even for all the things that my biological mom did to me and my sisters, even physically, and maybe we could talk about it. I don't know, I'm in a place now where I'm secure enough where I have no anger for that woman anymore. I could literally sit and have a coffee with her, only to selfishly have questions answered like, how did you meet my dad? What were your parents like? And then the important things. Do we have heart issues in our family? Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, like there are a lot of questions I would just love to know, and that every kid in foster care would love to know probably. But anyway, so we're at my dad's, and I guess he certainly had depression issues, and a treat for us was to go up the road or around the neighborhood in like a shopping cart. We lived adjacent to a Kmart at the time, and he would push me and my sister in the shopping cart around the block. And I remember it was like a roller coaster. There was nothing more fun. And we would beg him, and it was even more fun at night because I could stare at the stars and it would be cold. It just, it was just so much fun. So I remember begging, to go in the cart, or the buggy is what we would call it. And I wanted to get pushed in the buggy. And he was like, sure, let's go. So my sister, Missy, and I, who's 2 years older than me, so I'm 4, she's 6 years old, are jumping in the buggy. So he takes us right up the block. Instead of going around the neighborhood, he took us, up a block to the Kmart, which is where he originally got the cart from, I guess. But we went to the Kmart. We went inside, and I don't remember this part so much, but he went inside and he purchased a gun, a rifle, I guess, and ammunition. And then when he came outside, he committed suicide in the parking lot.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And to me, it's like, again, it's a foggy dream, it's been something that, it's just a crazy thing to think that that's a reality in my life. My sister's life too. It's like, it's not even me. And even more so Missy, she was older than me she was and Missy's very smart. So, he committed suicide. I remember it a little bit. I remember Missy crying. I remember her taking charge and being a big sister, and she got us home. She walked us home, and it's just shades of memories for me. But somehow, my next memories were home, and now there's police and paramedics at the house, which is my dad's girlfriend's house. Which is, I mean, you could see the Kmart from our front door, I remember her crying hysterically and being upset. And my older sister Brandy was there that weekend, actually. So all of us must have been there that weekend visiting. And Brandy's just tough. She's sweet, but she's just tough at heart. She's always been tough. And I remember her yelling at one of the paramedics because his arm was exposed. And she was just not having that. You know, she's like, you better cover up that arm, kind of a thing, to this grown man. And yeah, anyway, which is loving too. You know, she's tough. She's always been tough. You know, so just shades of just that. And very quickly, as any tragedy would have it, you know, my life changed. You know, at this point, my mom, I'm pretty certain, had either lost her parental rights or given them up. But she had already had a couple criminal charges, some petty theft, some drug possession, but it was all very petty. She had nothing that was like, I think there were misdemeanor crimes. But like, it's not like my father's family came from a lot of means. I don't think that they were both were from the same, like, literal Section 8 home in Northern Philly. So like for generations. So, you know, I don't think that they were in a court battle, but I just think it was leverage or whatever. But, you know, she was already into a pretty bad lifestyle. And after he committed suicide, she came and picked me and my sister Melissa up. And then our worlds just really tailspinned and turned around. Within, I think, 72 hours, we were both barely alive. You know, a lot had happened. I mean, so we went immediately, and she took us to a homeless shelter, my sister and I, after my father's suicide. And she was dating, I don't know if you date a pimp, I don't know, living with her pimp, the same guy that would hit us with the belt buckle. And while we were at the homeless shelter, I guess they had negotiated prostituting my sister and myself for trafficking, as they say now, you know, like with two homeless men, you know. So there was like a movie event, and it's so triggering. I can talk about it now because of the years of therapy and work and everything I had to do. And also I've learned I am so not alone in this story. I'm alone, but especially for men, I appreciate talking about this now because, you know, it's not cliche or strange or odd to hear of a woman or a young girl being taken advantage of at all. But we don't think about young boys or young men, you know, and if we do, oftentimes it's too late. It's like, oh no, you know, so our radars just aren't as up as much, I think. So that's why I'm not ashamed to talk about it. I used to have such shame, and that was so silly. I didn't do anything wrong. You know, it just was a bad thing that happened to me, you know? And, so, you know, so we were prostituted, I guess, right?
And this is immediately after you see your dad.
A couple of days later, and but it wasn't just the sexual assault; there was like a physical assault on us. So I don't know what happened, other than things got really out of hand. I don't know if there was some crazy drugs I don't know what happened, but my sister and I were beaten very badly. And there was no covering that up. So somebody that worked at the shelter called the police. And my mom and her boyfriend were arrested in the shelter. And I do remember that. You know, I remember being it's my sister tells the story. She tells it really well. I wish I remembered it as well as she tells it. I remember police coming and them handcuffing her and taking her away and me just being confused. My sister tells the story as if they were walking around the shelter and they were saying, hey, is there I won't say her name. Is there a Mrs. Gibson here? Is there a Mrs. Gibson here? And they were asking around. Everyone's like, no, no, no. And then to hear my sister tell the story, I said, Mommy, that's you. And then boom, they get her. So I hope that's true. That's cute. But yeah. So they did arrest her. We went to the hospital. Legitimately, my sister barely survived. It's actually astonishing she was able to have children. I know that to be a fact. It's a good thing, I guess, a blessing. But she barely survived the assault. my scar's healed, and if I didn't tell you about it, you never would have known, especially as a young boy and growing up. And I don't know if these foster parents have children that have had maybe these issues in their past, or have siblings that have been sexually abused, or just been around or in the peripheral, and all these things are confusing and stuff. But like, I do want to offer hope that, like, I'll say this much: as a young man, even though there was irrefutable medical reports and all these things, and just scars on me, and all these things, I would have told someone I didn't feel safe with, a teacher, a parent, even a therapist. That didn't happen to me. And because of my own, I guess, shame or whatever, just my own inability to process it. I didn't understand, I don't know. So stay with it. If you have those instincts, if you feel like they've been around, just give them love, give them empathy. When they're ready, they will share. It's just about being safe, maybe, and it took me a long time. That's why I just say that. And again, that's why I try to be, and interrupt me at any point with any questions. I try to be giving, because I need to be. It's my turn. It's my turn. So she was arrested and, we went I bounced around a lot. The group homes, the 11 homes, it was in about a year and a half, I bounced around a bunch. And it was first families, next of kin, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
And then a friend of a family, and then this foster care home. But we had a lot of issues, and that it was the mid-'80s. It was inner city Philly. Our caseworker she was so pretty to me. I think she was like 19. She was a baby, She probably had 100 kids, 100 cases, I don't know, but this world,
right.
50, 30, too many.
Yeah. Right.
And, there's only so many houses that were available, and there weren't all good homes. I had some weird experiences in some homes, so we got moved out of them. And, but we had a difficult because there were 4 of us, and we had a newborn. Yeah. We had a baby that was under 6 months. Wow. So that got us into a lot of homes. My little sister, Valerie. And then ultimately our caseworker was challenged with, okay, no one can take 4 kids. They're not lasting more than 3 or 4 or 5 days. So before we'd all have to uproot and change. So everything was a temporary move. So then they tried to pair us off, and these 2 will go here and these 2 will go here. And then that worked until it didn't work. And then it was like, well, let's find the permanent home for everybody. And then we're all separated. And now that's, and we all have our own unique story from there, I guess, But for me, that I ended up going with a family that I was with for over a decade, and they never adopted me. So it was still weird. I did 11 homes. I did all these different experiences, had the group home experience as well. And then I got with home. It was just it was a family who never had, and I want to be so careful with them because, again, I'm so appreciative of the opportunities and the environments they exposed me to. But it wasn't loving. They didn't choose me. They didn't really want me. They appreciated, I don't know what they appreciated. I know that I did my chores and I was a good kid, and or I was as good as I could have been, and I really wanted to please them. I really wanted to be adopted. It was, so I did everything I could to be a good boy and earn it and be good enough. And anytime I messed up, I was told I wasn't good enough. This is why we wouldn't adopt you, so So I think those people loved me as best they could. I do believe that. They didn't choose it. When I was at Replanted and surrounded by people who chose that life, that's what I mean. I had people that really resented me and didn't want me there. They had some financial issues when they got me. There was a bankruptcy. I think the check kind of helped. I think the monthly check sort of helped. I think, I don't know. I can't believe it was just money motivated because, frankly, it's not enough money to take on a kid. You know what I mean? So it can't be that, But so I don't know. That's a big conundrum to me. We have no contact with them, and it wasn't my choice. It was them. They were like, "You're dead to me. Quit coming around," kind of a scenario. And ultimately, you just have to respect that. And I made my own family with my own kid. And focused on them and being the parent I want to be and loving father I want to be. But I don't know, all that stuff was a mystery to me. I'm still figuring it out. Again, it was so refreshing and rejuvenating, and like to know that the world of foster care, adoption, all these things is filled with people who are God-driven too, and like want to love, have a capacity to love and to give, and it's not out of some weird inheritance of something. I don't know, and that was very healing for me, just being exposed to you. And the fact that a couple of things, and this is going to take me off track, but this is just me appreciating you and your audience too, I also, as a kiddo growing up in this, like I was limited to my own world and perspective. So when I was just visiting and I was a fly on the wall and hearing some of the parents talk to each other or discussing how like foster care, how they'd gone through all the classes and the certifications and did all the time and their money and all these, inspected their homes and their kids and just really exposed their whole lives. And then they're like a year later, they go, "What have we done? This is nothing like we thought it would be." And I was like, really? Or how much it strained their marriages. Or how guilty they felt with their biological kids because now they're dividing time. And I was like, oh, I was totally the other kid that needed more time and attention. 100%. Like, and so it took me out of my own perspective. And I was like, whoa, like there's a whole, look, selfishly, I never considered any of those challenges or that perspective or the journey from that side, And it was good for me. I was like, wow, because I know what it's like to be a dad. I know what it's like to be like, I get that. I can understand that. But I never once considered what it would be like to feel guilty about dividing your time between kids or these other things, or I don't know, so it's like, it was important for me to hear that stuff too, I think.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that the case? It's so important for all of us to get out of our own world. In whatever that world is and hear from other people. I mean, I can say that just doing this podcast, I have gleaned so much from all of our guests. And it has, my life has been changed by getting to sit in this seat. And it's a gift. I think that I would love to ask you, John, as a kid and all the things that were going on in your life, obviously you're living that inside. You don't know how to process it, all of that. What did it look like to the world? What did you look like? How did you react? How did you respond? Because I think this could be really helpful for all of us.
Man, what a great question. So I'm going to say this. This is the most honest answer. I think it depends who you ask. I think it really depends who you ask. I think that I know I was filled with anxiety as a kid. So at every moment, I'm coping. I pretty much was white knuckling most of my life. I really feel that way. I feel like I really do, and I was very conscious. I was very conscious of my surrounding. And for better or worse, I was probably pretty conscious of people. Eyes being on me. So maybe I was aware. So either I looked composed to some, or maybe others knew what they were looking at, and they're like, "That kid's a wreck." I don't know. But I think that for people who were like trauma informed, they knew what they were looking at. I had some teachers and some counselors in my life that just knew pretty quickly there was more going on here. But then I have people who have known me for 25 years and been like, "John, I had no idea about certain things." And I'm like, well, that's interesting too, So I wish I could give you it's pretty ambiguous. I know it, but I wouldn't give a better answer. I'll tell you a quick story. I don't know if this means anything at all, but this was a moment as an adult. I was like, oh, so I was, I was dating my ex-wife. Sounds awful, but sounds terrible. But I was dating my son's mom. and I'm in love, and I just wanted her to know all these things about me, which was new. Bringing someone into different parts of my life, because I got to start over a lot. And when I went to college, I got to be, well, this is John now. And post college, this is John now. And so I didn't connect dots from people, but it was important for me to do that with her. I wanted to bring her into as much of my life as I could at that time. So I said, I want you to meet my friend Courtney from high school. And Courtney is really successful. She's always been really outgoing. And she was a friend of mine who wasn't like a best friend, but I always really appreciated her because I was a little bit more shy, and she was always thoughtful. But John, why don't you come sit over here? And I needed that invitation, or else I wasn't going to be there. So I always just appreciated Courtney for that. So I'm a foster care kid. I'm a ward of the state. No one's giving me money. No one's like, I don't have a car. Like, I'm in a very affluent county in Middle Tennessee called Williamson County. A lot of country music stars, multimillionaires live there. Amazing education, great teachers. But I'm a ward of the state, right? So, and I did sports. I wrestled. So during the school year, I didn't really work, but I would work all summer, and I would work like weekends and stuff on breaks and stuff when I could. But if I had to save my money, I had to budget, and that's how my life worked, And I worked 1 year at Abercrombie and Fitch in the mall, and I did it for 2 years, but for 1 year specifically to buy a coat, because they had this really cool corduroy coat that I just had to have. And with the employee discount, I think it was $150. It was so silly. And next year I bought a pair of jeans, which I think were like $90. It was just ridiculous for one pair of jeans, right? So I had a pair of khakis, my Abercrombie jeans, and then a bunch of different shirts. I had 2 pairs of shoes in high school. I had a black pair of like leather shoes that were my nice shoes, and then a pair of like sneakers, like whatever they were, right? And very common thing with foster care kids too. We hold on to our shoes. Shoes are a premium. I think we have a hard time getting rid of them, even when we outgrow them. We all have it. I don't know what it is. Maybe we drank it in the water. I don't know. It's just a thing we all have. I have a hard time getting rid of shoes. I don't know. But anyway, so years later, I'm like in my 30s, and my then wife or girlfriend at the time is with Courtney at dinner, and she comes home and she goes, "Man, Courtney said the funniest thing about you." I go, "Oh yeah, what's that?" She said, "John would have been so cute in high school, but he always wore the same 2 pairs of pants." And it was one of those moments in my life where I was like, God, ignorance is such bliss. Because I really thought I fooled everyone. I just thought, like, I swear, I thought I fooled everyone. I thought, hey, they were clean. I washed them, and since they were expensive, they were nice in my mind, and I would interchange them. But I think about that, and I was horrified. I was so embarrassed. I was like a 30-year-old man. But at the same time, I was like, man, ignorance is so bliss. So, but I think about that in a way. It's like, to answer your question, I thought I had everyone fooled. I didn't have everyone fooled. So I don't know, Yeah.
Do you feel like for you, it was more your tendency to go inward than to like lash outward? Like more the anxiety and that?
Yeah. As a young man, I was way more outward. Puberty made me go inward for sure.
Interesting.
And then sports helped me channel it. Thank God. Because I was full of testosterone and anger issues. So thank God I had a really good outlet. But no, as a young man, I had big feelings, and even they would get away from me. It would be a simple, hey, you're in timeout, that would escalate into an hour crying, kicking. It would be like, what is it? And it was because it had to come. And even as my little body and mind didn't know, and I would cry and kick it out, and then I'd be great for a week, and I would have those things, and teachers, it's funny, back then things were very different too. Like you were just put in special ed and then slowly kind of integrated if you didn't have a lot of academic issues and stuff, like for like emotional support or whatever, they would put you in the same class as kids with Down syndrome or whatever their special needs may have been, but I do think that teachers would get it. They would naturally be like, this kid has a rhythm. and, he has a rhythm, and let him have a blowout and we'll be okay. And because I think I was good hearted, but I definitely had big feelings. I'm still sensitive. I'll still watch a movie and tear up. That's who I am probably as a human. But as a little kid, I had no understanding of any of those things. And my perspective was different. Like, I could tell you another story. I didn't share Replanted, or maybe I did, but not on the big stage. But this was like a moment where I was like, I felt so different. You talk about a black sheep than normal kids. The first time in my life I could ever feel like, oh no, like I can't be me, or I'm different, or whatever, was I was like 10 years old, which, anyway, I was like 10 years old, and we're in the neighborhood cul-de-sac, bunch of kids. And one of the kids' house has a pool. So we're all at his house, and he's like 12, he's 2 years older than me, and he has a sister that's my age, like 10. And there's a group of like 7 or 8 of us kids there. So a pretty good medium-sized group of kids, right? And we're having an awesome day, having a fun day at the pool. We're running around, we're all playing, we're having a great day. And the sun's starting to come down, and it's about to get dark. And so we get out of the pool, and we're all just sitting there talking, and it's kind of getting cold. And I remember we're wrapping ourselves with our towels, and all the parents go in the house, and us kids are just talking by the pool. And I remember feeling all of a sudden that feeling I felt. I didn't feel safe. My spidey sense went off, and I just, oh no, So these are my friends, and I was concerned for them, right? So I felt brave or comfortable, whatever the word was, in that situation. I said, hey, we all need to go inside. And they kind of look at me like they could hear I'm disturbed probably. And they're like, why? Or maybe I yelled, but anyway, it was urgent to me. We need to get inside. We need to go inside. And they go, well, why? And I go, we're going to get raped. Oh. And they go, what's rape? What's rape? So then I took it upon myself to give a master class in what I thought rape was, Wow. So I do my best and said whatever it was I said about, well, this is what they're going to do to you, and this is what they'll probably do to you because you're a girl and it's different. Could you imagine? Like, I'm a father. Could you imagine? So everyone goes inside. I go home. And I don't know, 10 minutes later, one of the moms comes over and is knocking on the door. And I answer the door. She opens her, she goes, get your father. And I go, he's busy, because I was a prom. And she goes, get your father. And I go, okay. Now, honestly, I promise you, I didn't even actually realize I was in trouble yet. I promise you I didn't even get it. Yeah. I just remember, I knew she was mad about something, but I didn't even realize what I had done was bad or whatever. Yeah. Bad, right? Yeah. So I go and get him, which is essentially telling on myself. And then I get it, and I wasn't even concerned about the conversation. I went and watched TV. And then he comes back and he's angry, and I'm sure I got a spanking, and I'm in trouble and grounded. But the sad part of the story is this, right? A lot of sad things, but none of those kids ever talked to me again. They weren't allowed to talk to me again. They didn't talk to me on the bus anymore. And that sucked. And as a kiddo, I knew whatever, my experience was bad and I don't know. I can't tell anyone and they won't get it. And I got in trouble, and it was just bad. It was really bad. So I knew right then and there, I was going to take it I thought I was going to take it to the grave, So I won't now, and I'll talk about it now, but, and I think about it now. I go, how would I, because I've thought about this my whole life, and, at different times in your life, you have different opinions, right? And I think about it as a parent, what would I do if my 13-year-old came home and said, Daddy, you know what I heard today? Or if my son at 10 did the same thing, as a parent, how I would react, and I certainly wouldn't go to the door and whatever. I'd make a call and be more concerned and have questions probably. But
right.
Yeah, I don't blame any adult for how they maybe chose to handle it. Well, maybe the one that beat me for it. But other than that, I don't blame them because who knew how to navigate something like that. But yeah, it made my childhood way different. So by the time I was in high school with kids who were like rich and in this great, really privileged environment and stuff, it was way easier just for them to assume I was one of them, which most did.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they think I was any different?
Yeah.
That was all they knew, right? So I was just like them. And I was totally cool with them thinking that.
Yeah.
Other than the 2 pair of pants.
Yeah. Do you remember getting on the bus that next day and seeing those kids?
Oh,
like, were you like, hey guys? And it was...
Oh, it was brutal. It was like Forrest Gump, can't sit here stuff.
I know. Honestly, I'm thinking of that. I'm thinking of that because we just watched that movie not that long ago.
It was just like that. Yeah. It was like averting eye contact. It was really, and I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
And, so it was just.
And do you think that your senses went off out of a threat? Or do you think that it was just, was that just kind of a pattern for you that it would just come up in a cycle?
Yeah, it would come up in a cycle. I needed therapy, and it was just getting dark out and I got scared of the dark. So to me, my mind jumped to the scariest thing I'd ever been through. And I felt safe. I felt comfortable with my friends, and I cared for them. And I didn't
I know you were actually trying to protect them, which is so heartbreaking.
Yeah, I was. In my mind, it was like, y'all got to get inside quick. The rapers are out here. Like in my mind, that was And there was no scary around. It was just I got scared of the dark. Is what it was. Yeah.
And John, I'm so sorry for that. I have a 10-year-old son, and I'm just thinking of the hurt and I'm just so sorry.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's okay. Thank you. Yeah, and it's okay. I mean, look, I'm also no angel. And what I mean? No
one is.
Yeah. And I've heard all the ones I love, and I've done so many mistakes. Yes. So it's like, I'm not perfect. And we grow from these things,
right.
and if those kids even remember that, who are now adults, almost 40, if they even remember it, I'm sure they grew from that too. I can't imagine now as an adult, if they even remember, they wouldn't think like, I don't know. Like maybe there should be aware for their own kids, or that was coming up. Wow, that could have been around in my own neighborhood and I didn't know it. I should have been maybe whatever,
Right.
I'm sure they could take something positive away from it. I guess is what I hope.
Right.
I mean, it would never serve me to do the mental dialogue of like, I'm damaged goods or no goods, or what could they think about me? Because no one's thinking that. And no one's thinking that. And then the truth is, it doesn't matter either. I appreciate that. I'm okay. I'm okay. I love that. At the end of the day, like I woefully fail in a lot of stuff. But like, my kids are like healthy. They're happy. They've never missed a meal. They go to like really good schools. Like, I'm so proud of it. Like, I'm like, so I like live for that. Like, and like, it builds me. And it's so weird because my whole life, I chased family so bad. I wanted it so desperately. I mean, so bad. And it was so important to get a name. Just give me your name and what that would mean. And becoming a father, to me, it healed a lot of those things. But in a way, one thing I didn't even understand, and for years, I guess, even still, like, it's the only thing in my life I'm not insecure about. And it doesn't mean I'm perfect and I have ego. No, there's days I'm like, I suck at this. Like, I'm not doing this right. It's not that, but I have never had to question, does my kid love me? I have never had to worry, these things, like, it is the most secure love, like pure, those relationships are just, there's nothing like that, you know, and like that's such a gift. So like whatever longing and missing and families aren't perfect either. It's when you're an orphan or in foster care, it's really easy to romanticize, and every Christmas will be perfect. And have you ever had in-laws? Christmases are not always perfect. Like Thanksgiving every year can sometimes be a drag. You know, like it's a lot of work. You know, families are also, they're not perfect either. You know, it's like you got to keep perspective, and it's how you make your own and how you value your own, I think. I don't know. Anyway, you know.
And how do you feel like, John, how do you feel like you have come to that point to be able to have this hope, to be able to have this, where your past hasn't defined you, it hasn't buried you?
Let me grab this. I'll tell you. Let me grab this on my fridge right here. So I give all the credit to one woman, okay? So my 6th grade teacher, Judy Stockton. But you say hope, and it's all about hope. So I carried this around in my wallet for many years until I stopped carrying a wallet, and now it's on my fridge. And I would read this when I needed hope, like literally when I needed hope, and when I got off track, you know, and because when I got in trouble or when I just, you know, and consequences were different for me and like other kids in foster care. You don't get the benefit of the doubt. If you and 3 friends vandalize something, just boys being boys or being silly, or we're out past curfew, let's say even something a little bit more innocuous, you know, you may go to juvie. They may go home. You know, they might get a phone call from the police officer for their parents to pick them up. You might be in the system, and now you're in the system, you know, and that could go a whole other way, you know. So it's like you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt. And many times in my life, even though I was with one family for many years, it was on me. So if I didn't have money for rent or a place to live, I lived in my car. It was I didn't have anyone to call, you know, and if I did, you know, I mean, I had those hardships too. And I mean, I had times where I had to go, man, I went to a food truck once and I asked for a taco guy for his broken taco shells because I was starving. I had no money for food. I was like, can I have your broken shells? And he's like, sure. And he made me a plate, you know? So there's hope. There's always hope, and you'll find hope in these moments if you're brave enough to ask too. But anyway, so I give a lot of the credit to Miss Stockton. And Miss Stockton for me was somebody who, you know, I was behind academically. She invested a lot of time tutoring me for free for 3 years for free, and invested in me emotionally. She got me a therapist for free in high school. That helped me a lot. But she would always talk about things like tenacity and spirit and hope and like, you don't quit. We don't quit, you know, and that you're the master of your fate. And, you know, you can make these decisions. And I identified with that because at the end of the day, I knew when things went bad, it was all on me and I had no one to call. So I identified with, well, if it's good, then that could be on me too. Like, I could choose that. And if I'm willing to work, then I could like make that happen. And it didn't make like anything out of reach, but like it made a lot of things seem possible for me. And anyway, so with that in mind, I carried this forever, and she would read this to me. Miss Stockton would read this to me every Friday from 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade for 3 years. She would read this to me, and she would make sure I had full attention every time. But it's Invictus by William Ernest Hensley. So, at the night that covers me, black is the pit from pole to pole. I thank whatever gods may be for my unconsequential soul. Conquerable. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried out loud. Under the bludgeoning of change, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishment's the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. I love that. I love that. You know, I was getting beat up at home. You know, I was getting ignored when I wasn't getting ignored. You know, like man, and anyone can identify, especially as a teenager, one or two feelings. Either you don't want to be looked at all or you really want to be recognized, you know? And I think I struggled with that a lot. You know, I wanted to be chosen so badly, you know, but I was afraid anybody would see me because they wouldn't want me, you know? So for a long time, I just said, hey, this is on me. Like, I got to be the master of my own fate here, you know, and I got to make it happen. And I don't know, with that, like, I don't know, that is hope, right? Like, it's just having optimism, believing in something's greater for you, you know, and that, I don't know, you know, I wish there was no real blueprint. I wish I knew, like, I was going to high school and then went to college. Like, there was no blueprint for me. Like, I always used to say I got lucky, but I saw a lot of these hard things through, so I know I should take some accountability. But I got lucky, you know, I don't know.
Was there a point that you met God, that you felt God's love for you? Was there a point that that faith became real?
A couple of times. I mean, I think yes and no. So, I mean, I definitely was saved, and I was baptized in high school. So, and you know, so like that was a very real thing and an acknowledgement of God. But even that was a funny sort of situation because so I'm in Sunday school on a Sunday, and I'm pretty sure it's Easter Sunday. So it's packed and everybody in the world is there, right? And no, I'm not even pretty sure. It's Easter Sunday. And I'm like 16 years old, 17 years old, and don't know anything about Christ, really. Like, very little. I mean, I know some Old Testament stuff.
Sure.
Just from like being exposed and 10 Commandments and whatever. But I don't know anything, right? So they're talking about the resurrection of Christ. And I go like this. And I remember it was so packed. And this is my best friend's church. And it's Church of Christ, which is a very conservative group in church. And like, there's no instruments in the church. Women don't participate very much. There's elders that make a lot of decisions. King James Bible, like, pretty conservative, right? Yeah. And but anyway, so I don't know the room. I don't know anything. And they're talking about the resurrection and a cave, and he comes back to life. And I'm like, what? So I raise my hand and I go, and I'm quoting myself here. And I go, whoa. I can't believe I was this brash either as a kid. But I go, whoa. I thought the story goes, oh my God. Oh, I thought the story goes, he gets like killed on the cross and then it's like over. And then all these kids start laughing. Like, the room is like, right? And I'm like, and I start to shrink in my seat. And the pastor, who was the youth pastor at the time, said, whoa. And he immediately hushed that room and took control. And he goes, wait a minute. He doesn't know. You can't laugh at him. He doesn't know. And he goes, no, John. And then he kind of very lovingly sort of explained, no. So, a couple days later, and he starts kind of walking through, and they come back to the cave, and and I'm like, oh, really? Like, man, I'm like, really? Like, and I'm fascinated. I'd never heard of this. I had no idea, Wow. So this is the first time I'd ever heard it. So, and I'm like, wow, this story gets way better. And they're like, quit calling me the story.
Way better.
But with that, I started going every week and twice a week, and I got saved and I got baptized. So, like, I definitely had a recognition of God and had faith, and believed in God, especially from then on out. But I definitely had different times in my spiritual journey where I've been closer and further, that's for sure. But I've definitely, I'll say this too, though. So like, I want to acknowledge that at 16 for sure. But like now at 39, it would be like, it would take more effort for me to deny God's hand in my life than to ever, it's like, I have been very disconnected at times, and I've never been like, I've never denied God. I've never not had faith. I've never been like agnostic, but I've definitely been times where like I've almost leaned too much into this. I'm the master of my domain, and had too much ego about it, and been like, I control everything, where you certainly do not, But there have just been things in my life recently. I was in a car wreck. We hit a deer and completely totaled the car. Every airbag went off. Walked away with a couple bruises on my ankle. Had it been a different car, a different like it was terrifying. Totally scary situation, but it's like God completely protected me in that situation. Insurance covered everything. Didn't even have to pay. It's like things work out sometimes, and it's like, it would be crazy to say God didn't have a hand in that, and to appreciate those things and to acknowledge like he's got me, and these things you worry about. And even the hard stuff where you're like, man, where were you, God? Years later, you could be like, oh, I actually do get it now. I had to live that to be able to help this person, or to even know what to say right now to somebody else,
John, is that how you reconcile? Because obviously that's like the big question that when we see suffering, that so many people, we can all, I think, at different times wrestle with the question of why does a good God let bad things, horrific things happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I got to believe it's to serve someone else later. I got to believe that, like, because at the end of the day, like, we're brothers and sisters, I believe, or if you're not a Christian or you don't identify that way, then we're a community and we're in this together. We're under that star and those, like, we're in this together. We're sharing this air, and we got to treat each other. And we got to remember that because we need each other, and so I got to believe that, but yeah, like, hey, there's certain things that, heaven forbid, God, if I lost a child, I don't know if I could ever get out of bed. I don't know if I could ever get out of bed, ever again. I might just give up myself, so I don't know, there's certain things that I would never be able to explain or understand too, but I would just hope and believe that it would have to serve to help someone else, and I meet people, I can't say I met him. There's a gentleman that through work I've known for 15 years, but I was recently at a conference talking with him, and I realized he had lost a daughter. And I just mentioned, that's my wildest fears. Something happened in my children. Worst fear. Yeah. And for one, I was surprised I hadn't known that, right? But then two, I'm like, oh my gosh, Brad, like, I've known you a decade, and you're always smiling, and the first one and he's Christian, and the first one to volunteer for someone and bring a dinner and show up, and man, I just like what I said to you, I was like, I don't think I'd ever get out of bed again. Like, how are you? You, man, like, and I'm glad you exist, because if God forbid anything happened to me, I'm calling you, like, like, right. So I'm glad he exists. I hate that he went. I can't stand he went through that. I don't want anyone to go through that. But man, I don't know. Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. When we can just keep that perspective on, one, we're not going to understand fully. We're just not. God is, he has a perspective that we just can't even begin to have.
Right.
And we need each other. And I think as we close out here, John, I would love it. I know that what you've said today is giving perspective to our listeners and giving hope and help. Is there anything on your heart right now that you really want to share that you haven't been able to share with our listeners as we close out here?
Nothing, nothing on my heart. I mean, I would want every one of the listeners to, I don't know. I want them to feel rejuvenated and more positive after this conversation than when they entered it, is what I would hope, So to your listeners specifically, thank you for being you. These kiddos definitely need you. Everyone needs a mom and dad, or a mom or a dad. Everyone needs a parent. Everyone deserves family. And I do believe I know it's cliche. Every family looks different. You don't have to be the same race. You don't have to, these things. Yeah. We don't have to be in a box about it. If you can love somebody and then be a shining light to them, do that. And I am glad your listeners exist. I'm glad that they have a community for each other too. Like I said, I'm learning, even I'm learning, and the toll that foster care takes, and I want to adopt, that's something for me down the road. For sure, on my path. It's my life. I don't think my journey will be complete either until I do that one day also. But anyway, so they inspire me. I don't know. I wish I had the right words to just make them all feel good or just a little bit better. I wish. Yeah.
Well, we're in this together. And John, I am truly thankful that you also exist. You serve a very important purpose in this world, and just keep being you and keep doing what you're doing. It's needed. You matter. I thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Well, I hope that today's episode encouraged you wherever you are on your foster care journey. We want you to stay connected, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you will never miss an episode. Also, we have great content at theforgotteninitiative.org. Thank you for watching. I cannot wait to be with you next time.